respected, good-natured, and good-humored colleague. 20 years after he joined as a young intern who developed and designed public work projects. He joined the county after serving in the Army for 4 years as a cavalry scout, leaving as a sergeant and obtaining his Bachelor of Science degree in civil engineering. In August of 2002, the freshly licensed engineer was promoted to county engineer and began overseeing a just created engineering section in what was called at the time the Transportation Department. In 2013, he became supervisor of the road section when the Engineering Road Department was created. Back then, the department was comprised of 65 employees whose work included project design, traffic management, surveying, grant management, project inspection, road and bridge maintenance, vegetation management, right-of-way and permit administration, and basically our infrastructure capital improvement plan management, a critical component of the receiving of millions of dollars into the county for road development and other critical infrastructure projects. He said he is most proud of the tens of millions of dollars in construction projects that the department completed throughout his 2-decade-long career because of what these projects meant to the quality of life of thousands of residents throughout the county. What is said of Robert, and I think he writes this himself. What is said of Robert is that he cares a great deal about his staff and often takes the time to mentor them and support their professional development, placing their needs first. As a manager, he believes that if you take care of people, they will take care of the customer and the county's business. When he faces a challenge, Robert maintains a calm demeanor, no matter the circumstances. His advice to others is simply to treat others with dignity and respect. When faced with smiling, eager-to-learn faces like he did at the Desert Hills Elementary on 3 different occasions, he made reading fun for dozens of children in Read Across America Day. So not only contributing to the county, but basically doing outreach into the community as well. Now, as he looks ahead at his next chapter and retires from the county, Robert plans to spend more time doing his favorite activities, spending time with his family. For his 20-year recognition, we learned of his love for engraving, cutting, polishing stones and gems, and the collection of coins, paper currency, and medals. He will do that now in order to pursue several other hobbies, including traveling, reading, hunting, shooting, gardening. In short, he will stay busy. Although my interaction with Robert over the course of the years is that he's a great dancer. I know it from personal experience because he's danced around every question I've ever asked him. In fact, in his retirement, I know they aren't open anymore, but he'd be a great instructor at a Fred Astaire dance studio. As he looks forward to retirement, Robert said he plans to spend more time with his family, his beautiful wife, Eva, beautiful daughters, Roberta and Denise, 3 handsome grandsons, Nico, Jaden, Matthias, and a beautiful granddaughter, Melody. He does attribute the beauty that runs in the family to himself. He's mentioned that on several occasions, how they're all beautiful, handsome, and they all look like him. Ladies and gentlemen, in honor of your service, Robert L. Armijo retired with distinction after 20 years of loyal service on the 31st of December of 2021. Ladies and gentlemen, please join the commission in giving a very special recognition to a very dedicated public servant. Robert Utmut. Can the beautiful Armijo family please come forward?
Thank you. Commissioner, could I get one behind you guys? I just want him.
We'll get out of your way. No worries. Yeah, that's right.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We'll proceed with Mr. Luis Marmolejo, 21 years of service to the county, who is now retiring. Luis Marmolejo, also known as Butch. And in the 21 years I've known him, I've never heard that before. And of course, he can say, only my friends call me Butch. That's why you're not aware of it. But Butch, and I asked him, how does someone get a nickname like Butch? He goes, well, remember the Bozo the Clown series? And most of you in the room probably don't, but I do. And there was a Butchie Boy and Belinda portion of it. So I guess Mr. Marmolejo's enthusiasm for that program led to the nickname that he carries. He joined Doña Ana County in 1999 as a planning assistant in the County Development Department. He quickly became a planner and then senior planner in 2004, where he has served ever since. Prior to his career with Doña Ana County, Luis was a residential and commercial painter. He considers himself a master painter, or in other words, the Rembrandt of house painters. And he's also always being asked questions about the proper paint to use when family and friends are doing a project. While originally studying engineering technologies at NMSU, Luis was convinced by Dr. Robert Cerniak in the Geography and Earth Sciences Department to pursue city planning. A move, Luis says, changed his life. He then received his bachelor's degree in city and regional planning in 1999. Luis is most proud of his role in improving the colonias of Doña Ana County. Working with a team made up of individuals from various departments, Luis was tasked with evaluating the colonias and basically painting a picture of their status. He held numerous meetings with community leaders in each of the colonias then basically also traveled to Santa Fe to help getting funding for improvement projects, millions of dollars for underserved communities. Luis also helped Anthony change from just a regional area into an incorporated city. He helped guide the process by making sure they followed state protocol and submitted filings at the right time. Luis also participated in shaping community districting, map zoning of Rodi, Vado, La Union, La Mesa. He basically participated in the development of the Doña County Comprehensive Plan and the One Valley, One Vision regional plan. Luis is a team player who is dependable and can be counted on to represent the county in a positive manner, says his supervisor, Janine Diviak. Being born and raised in Stallman Farms, a Navy veteran, as well as a New Mexico State Aggie, Luis is greatly respected by members of the various communities, and he has attended community meetings and engaged in planning events. Luis credits Commissioner Reynolds, who's with us, for helping him understand the benefits of retirement and the ability to focus on family. It was Commissioner Reynolds who helped Luis see that there is another life out there and consider retirement. So I personally want to thank Commissioner Reynolds for helping us lose another employee earlier than what he should have left. Because of this, though, Luis looks forward to spending more time with his family. His daughter Sonia, his son Pedro Luis, and his 4 granddaughters, Sabrina, Olivia, Selma, and Vanessa. Luis will be greatly missed, but we want to congratulate him on his well-deserved retirement and wish him luck in his second career as a full-time grandpa. But any of you looking to have your house painted and would like to contract with Luis, that's probably what he's going to be doing at this point, being a master painter. Commissioner Reynolds, would you please join us? In honor of your service, Luis Marmolejo retired with distinction after 21 years of loyal service on the 31st of December of 2021. Ladies and gentlemen, please join the commission in giving us very special recognition to a special public servant, Mr. Luis Marmolejo. And if you don't talk to one another, you can put it down. Do you have family here, Luis? Yes, I do. Will you have them come in?
Yeah, I'm gonna need a little bit of space so we can see the other commissioner. Perfect. Everybody smile, even if you're wearing a mask, we can tell. Awesome, perfect, thank you. Thank you.
Congratulations. We'll proceed with Officer Donald Marquez, 22 years, who is now retiring. Officer Donald Marquez joined Doña Ana County as a detention officer in 1999. 3 years later, he was promoted to sergeant, but after 4 more years decided to move back to his officer role and get back in the trenches with my coworkers. When needed, he would temporarily continue service in the role of a sergeant, but he preferred to be an officer who works the floor, interacting with coworkers and inmate population. He says it's been one crazy ride, but an enjoyable ride. Before joining the county, Mr. Marquez was working as a commercial driver for a lumber company when one day a neighbor asked him to give him a ride to the detention center. As he sat in the lobby and watched officers in their duties, he thought it was something that he would like to do. He applied, was accepted into the academy, shortly thereafter kicking off a 22-year career as an officer. Officer Marquez says he's proud of being a detention center officer because of all the good people he has met. So I want you to know, if you want to meet good people and enter into good relationships, get arrested, stay at the detention center, and you'll be able to have an opportunity to interact with officers like Officer Marquez. He feels most rewarded when he can take a bad situation and turn it into a positive one. In 2003, Mr. Marquez, Officer Marquez, became an instructor, teaching new recruits to respond to hazardous situations and diffuse problems without causing injury. He was also part of the Special Emergency Response Team and assisted with cell extractions and transport of high-profile inmates with professionalism. Don says that while working in this type of environment can be strenuous and stressful, he has learned a lot from supervisors on how to cope with stress and while keeping others safe. He especially credits some of the senior sergeants, Sergeant Paco Luna, Sergeant David Austin, for showing him the ropes. He has one of the best work ethics I've ever seen, Sergeant Austin has described. He has that old school mentality. He has to get things done, and he will get them done and won't finish until it's done. Sergeant Austin also said Officer Marquez's attitude was key to his success. He's a very dependable person, very good with everybody, with his attitude and camaraderie, and the way he likes to interact with people. He gets a lot of respect from inmates because of how he treats them. He's going to be missed by a lot of people. As Officer Marquez retires, he acknowledges that he cannot do what he used to do 20 years ago. Never admit that publicly, okay? Never. You can do more. And that it's time for him to move on and let those youngsters take over. He enjoys playing sports, particularly basketball, hiking outdoors, and cannot wait for more fishing. He looks forward to spending time with his family, his wife Bridget, who has stood by his side during hard, stressful times, and his daughter Sheila. In honor of your service, Donald M. Marquez, retired with distinction after 22 years of loyal service on the 31st of December of 2021. Ladies and gentlemen, please join the commission in again giving a very special recognition to Officer Donald Marquez.
Do you have any family members?
As we go forward with our last retirement recognition, I just want to remind the recipients of this recognition, like I normally do. These are not fruit platters for you to serve at home. These are recognitions from the county in terms of the special and unique contributions that you made during your careers. So put it in a place of honor. And again, I thank you for your patience. This last one may take us just a little bit longer. No. Back it up, back it up, back it up. Oh my, just freeze it there, I guess. Mr. Charles Chuck McMahon, 20 years of service, who now is retiring. Okay, now the video and the lights.
Maybe someday I'll be strong. Maybe it won't be long. I'll be the one who's tough. You'll be the one who's got it rough. It won't be long, and maybe I'll be real strong. Maybe I'll do things right. Maybe I'll start tonight. You'll learn to cry like me. Baby, let's just wait and see. Maybe I'll start tonight and do things right. You'll control me, oh so boldly. Rule me time and free. So the pain that shakes me finally makes me get up off of my knees. Maybe I'll be fast as you. Maybe I'll break hearts too. But I think you'll slow down when your turn to hurt comes around. Maybe I'll break hearts and be as fast as you. You'll control me, oh so boldly. Rule me time and free. So the pain that shakes me finally makes me get up off of my knees.
I don't know, Chuck, you should shave. Gosh, you'll look like you're 20 years old. When Chuck joined Doña Ana County on May the 1st of 2000, the most popular movie at the time was Gladiator, starring Russell Crowe and Joaquin Phoenix. The number one song was Maria Maria by Santana, and we were just recovering from the Y2K bug. And who else remembers those kind of events? Probably not many. So, since I've watched the movie Gladiator at least 100 times, from now on, since Chuck carries a beard similar to what Russell Crowe. So I'll always think of Chuck as now not Chuck McMahon, but Maximus Decimus Meridius. Chuck's first job at Doña Ana County was a planner in the Community Development Department. He did a great job there. And in September of 2002, he was soon promoted to a senior planner managing subdivision cases and transportation planning. He became a leader of the newly named Community Development and Economic Development Department in May of 2004. He was named to his current role of Assistant County Manager in 2013. He was also acting county manager from December 2009 to April of 2010, and again May 2017 to January of 2018. The County Colonias initiative that led to the creation of the Colonias Trust Fund is one of the projects Chuck is proudest of because of the positive impact it continues to play on people's lives. He is also a steadfast protector of the environment and has worked tirelessly with our community for the Flow Control Ordinance, which led to significant funding being made available through the Illegal Dumping Partnership. Chuck is not only knowledgeable, but strategic in his decisions, bringing collaboration, teamwork, and humor as called for by each situation. At work, Chuck is focused on the mission and the tasks assigned. He manages fluidly from one department to the next, from one project to another, and rolls up his sleeves, helping them wherever it's needed. Well-liked and appreciated by colleagues, Chuck is known to be a fair, thoughtful, and influential decision maker. What he will do with all the free time he has upon retiring, he describes in two words, he will continue climbing. For those who do not know, Chuck is an avid mountain climber who can be found hanging around some of the most beautiful ledges in the county. He's also looking forward with more time with his wife, Guinevere, sons Cormac, Spencer, and daughter Drew. We're almost there. On a personal level, Chuck, I want you to know that your commitment to the county has elevated the quality of public service provided to all of our communities. The county is a better political institution because of your efforts. I'm sure, though, however, in spite of this being a retirement recognition, I'm sure that we will continue to work with you in other ways that will continue to benefit county residents. And that should be beginning probably about the middle of January. In honor of your service, Charles B. McMahon, retired with distinction after 21 years of loyal service on the 21st of December of 2021. Chuck and I live next door to each other. And the thought of having to see him in pajamas and shorts coming out to get the paper in the morning, is a image that I'm trying not to have to deal with. So I'm hoping that I don't really have to deal with that. Chuck, again, special thank you for your efforts. Ladies and gentlemen, please join the commission in a very special recognition to a very special human being. Don't go away. I thought there was more video. More video? No? Oh, tomorrow. Tomorrow. Okay.
Ellens, can you move forward just a little bit? Just Commissioner Ellens, a little bit? Thank you. Perfect. Got it.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Except for a few additional pictures, that completes our employee recognition.
Mr. Macias? Yeah,
Yes, sir.
You make me feel obligated to offer retirement advice to other people.
Please don't. Nothing personal, but please don't. Don't tell people how wonderful it is to be retired and to focus on their family. Because a year later, they'll come back and say, why did I retire so early?
Well, I don't know, I haven't regretted it, so.
Okay, well, all right, we're moving on to public input. There are members of the public that are present that would like to provide input to the commission. They're more than welcome to come up and speak. If they do, they'll have 3 minutes to speak, and when they're done, we ask that they sign the book on the left. If you are here to speak on an agenda item, we ask that you wait until that time if possible. Mr. Montgomery. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Mr. Chair.
You can take your mask off.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Chair. Good morning, Commissioners. Good morning, Mr. Macias and staff. My name is Eric Montgomery. In a day that we are talking about transitions, I'm here to talk to you about one that I went through that was not solicited by Commissioner Reynolds. You have all known me for the last decade as a Mesilla Valley Economic Development Alliance representative. I wanted to stop by today and introduce you with a new hat. I will now be coming to you as the Regional Director for Governmental Affairs of the El Paso Electric Company. This is a new position for El Paso Electric in that it will be both economic development and government affairs. And with that, I encourage all of you, if you have questions related to El Paso Electric, if you have questions related to economic development within your district, I'd be happy to set up a meeting with you. Look forward to working with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Montgomery, and congratulations on the new role. Go ahead and come on up.
I can remove my mask, right?
Yes, correct, yes.
Oh, good morning. Commissioners, Mr. Chair. Well, my name is Alex Segura. I would like to actually start with an apology for not addressing you in uniform, okay, to help you associate me with our department. Okay, we have been given a sudden directive, a set directive that we cannot attend BOCC meetings in uniform. So just keep that in mind. First off, I would like to say that, start with a couple of questions. You guys can think about it, but I'm gonna answer them as we speak. Have you ever ran behind a door with a shield to protect a brother or sister? We have. Have you ever been blinded by OC? Push forward to save a brother or sister? We have. Have you ever said no to a murderer or person allegedly being charges of murder? We have, and not knowing the impact of what that's going to cause. Have you ever seen somebody puking, defecating themselves, or detoxing, or had to administer Narcan because somebody's overdosing? Bet you guys haven't. We have. Have you talked to a brother or sister going through a divorce and have the keys to someone's gun safe for their own safety? We have. Has ever anybody threatened to kill you or rape your sister, mother, daughter on a daily basis? We have. Have you ever taken a shift for someone that can take their daughter to a recital, cover their Christmas, so that someone with kids can be there to see them open the gift for the first time? We have. Does your spouse ever question you in public, approaches you, tells you not, why didn't you do them? We have. Why? Because we dealt with them before. We are brothers and sisters that often take the role of cops, counselors, teachers, EMTs in our work environment. This job does not teach you, it actually changes you. The bond that we share is built in our common experience that we need to rely on each other as we are now as we speak, due to the fact that we're so short at our staff. I'm here to speak on their behalf. Lastly, I want to say, if you guys know how the Roman shield worked, is that because each man has held his shield protected not only to protect himself, but the next person behind him. One person alone is extremely vulnerable, but the shield is locked together in numbers is impenetrable. Our brothers and sisters, fellow officers at the detention center, are the shield that keep that place safe. Other individuals don't realize that what we go through, or they do consider the small incentive we do this for, instead of attempting to retain the people we want there. Which is another thing that brings morale down. And lastly,
And if you wouldn't mind wrapping up, Mr. Silva.
yes, sir, it's this last thing. It's time for someone to hear our voices and see us, the people over there, that actually have go through it every day, is here. We are tired of being treated like the forgotten officer in the county. Thank you.
Morning, Mr. Garcia.
Mr. Chairman, County Commissioners, good morning. On 26 October 2021, Michael McDevitt, Las Cruces Sun reporter, interviewed Doña Ana County Clerk, Amanda Askin, where she stated she was going to, as a means of providing accurate information, quote, be making in-person presentations to groups, not progressive groups, not liberal groups, not conservative groups, period. On 4 November, I requested she come to speak to our nonpartisan organization in order to better educate the citizens on the 2021 elections, very poor turnout. And going forward, she declined. I requested a one-on-one to clarify any questions she may have. No response. On 17 November, I sent an email to all of the Doña Ana County Commissioners and County Manager explaining the situation and communicating with the County Clerk. No response from any one of you. On 22 November, I sent an email to Representative Rubio asking if I could count on her support to get to the bottom of why the Doña Ana County Clerk refuses to engage with one of its citizens. Rubio's response, thanks for the email. I can't speak for another elected, nor can anyone else. Good luck. Basically, go away. Don't bother me. On 2 December, reporter McDevitt published the travesty the county clerk had inflicted on a group of concerned citizens. This is the only support as a citizen that I received in this county. Nothing from our elected officials. Zero. Nada. In my opinion, there is an apparent code of silence between elected officials where they won't support their constituents, even when another elected official is wrong, and a county clerk who discriminates against those who she doesn't like. So my question is, rhetorical question, of course, what is the clerk hiding? My name is Juan Garcia. Thank you.
Mr. Garcia, if you wouldn't mind also signing our book for the record. Thank you.
Mr. Commissioner and Commissioners, my name is Rick Renault, and it's kind of a segue from Juan's, and that was, did you see the performance of my counselor, my city councilor, Yvonne Flores, last week when she was cross-examining a person at public comment? It was just disgusting. And that brings me back to 2 years ago, the last time I was at the city council, when Councilor Gabe Vasquez and Councilor Flores decided to team up and attack the Doñana Historical Society because they wanted to change the name of Motel Boulevard. The city council couldn't abide by changing the name of Motel Boulevard to Pat Garrett Boulevard. Too white. And the ignorance. Pat Garrett's wife was Apolinaria Gutierrez. Pat Garrett and his wife, their daughter, was Elizabeth Garrett, who wrote the state song. So I just want to leave you with this. And by the way, that meeting 2 years ago led me to the school board this spring. Did you see us there? We found that same ethnic studies speech, that same type of special hate in the school board. They want to bring ethnic studies in. I downloaded what they wrote. It was racial. Armando Limon of Mesilla wrote, the reasons given 2 years ago by those two counselors, they were talking about money, were okay, pertinent. But the other reasons were racist and shameful. They should apologize or resign. They never did, and I kept going. Thank you.
Okay, are there any other public input at this time? Okay, we'll move on to staff input. Mr. Macias, is there any staff input?
Mr. Chairman, normally I don't speak during this portion of it. I just wanted to bring to your attention again as we continue to kind of promote people taking care of their personal health and protecting against the larger health dangers in the community. I just wanted to note that it just came out, the decision. The U.S. Supreme Court has turned away a challenge to New York State's vaccine mandate for healthcare workers, and I understand that this is restricted to healthcare workers. However, that mandate, it provides no exceptions for religious objectors. The vote of the Supreme Court was 6-3. This is the second time that the court has refused to block such a state vaccine mandate for healthcare workers. And in an earlier case out of Maine, or similar, New York provides only one exception to the mandate, and that is a narrow medical exemption for those who have suffered a severe allergic reaction after a previous dose of the vaccine or a component of the COVID-19 vaccine. I just wanted to bring to your attention that, again, the law is certainly moving in the direction of being very supportive of vaccine mandates. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Macias. Okay, we're on to county elected officials' input. Are there any elected officials? I'm not seeing them, so we'll move on to commission input. Are there any members of the commission that would like to provide any input, comments? Okay. All right, then we're on to agenda item number 1, which is the regular meeting minutes for November 23rd, 2021, and the special meeting minutes for December 2nd, 2021. I will note that there was one small typo within the meeting minutes of November 23rd, where at the very beginning it noted that the meeting was on November 22nd, but it was correct, as it is on the agenda, it is for November 23rd. So I'd like to see if I can get a motion and a second to approve the minutes as I mentioned here with that one small correction.
So moved.
Second.
All right, moved by Commissioner Chaparro, seconded by Commissioner Reynolds. Is there any other input? Public input? All right. Brandy, will you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Ellens? Commissioner Reynolds?
Yes.
Commissioner Chaparro?
Yes.
Vice Chair Murillo Trujillo?
Yes.
Chair Sanchez?
Yes. All right, the meeting minutes from December 2nd and November 23rd are approved. All right, we'll move on to, under presentations and proclamations, agenda item number 2, which is a presentation of a Silver Telly Award to Doña Ana County by Spectrum Reach for the Doña Ana County 2020 Census Animated Video. Ms. Liz Reed, good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Liz Reed, Community Constituent Services. I'm here with Ray May and Joel Marquez and Elm Marquez, and of course, our own very Joseph Vargas, to let the board and the public know that the county has won a prestigious Silver Telly Award. Joel will go more into the details about the creative process about it. For those who are unaware, the Telly Awards was founded in 1979 and honors groundbreaking video and film productions. Over 12,000 entries from all 50 states and 5 continents are submitted each year. Winners represent the best work of advertising agencies, production companies, television stations, and corporate video departments in the world. Less than 10% of those entries are awarded a Silver Telly Award. The Telly Award Judging Council consists of a group of leading video and television experts from some of the most prestigious companies in the world. World of entertainment, publishing, advertising, and emerging technology such as Warner Media, NBC News, who doesn't see NBC News, Framestore NY, and Vimeo, to name a few. It is our understanding that this may be the first Telly Award that the county has ever been awarded. But we don't have records going back to 1979, so I can't say that %. So this award comes from the 2020 Census campaign. As the lead of the campaign, one of my many responsibilities was to move the marketing and promotional items in the local census plan forward. During that campaign, as you know, it took us over a year to work on that. Communications coordinator Luce Rubio presented the idea of doing an animated video as a fun visual way to encourage the public to complete the census in our community. Luce Multimedia coordinator Joseph Vargas and I had virtual meetings with Ray, Joel, and Marquez from Spectrum Reach in the development of the animated video. I want to thank Luce and Joseph for your efforts on this video, your communications work throughout the outreach campaign. It certainly was an undertaking lasting nearly 2 years. Our deep appreciation to Spectrum Reach for submitting our collaborative work for such a notable honor. We are humbled by this. I want to publicly thank Constituent Service Specialist Susie Cordero and social media technician Corey Stone for their input and assistance with the 2020 Census campaign. It was a multi-level team effort to get all the marketing tasks done that was encompassed in the outreach plan. Now I'll turn it over to Ray for his comments.
Good morning, everyone. I'd like to take a moment to thank Doña Ana County for the opportunity to be a part of the 2020 census campaign.
And I apologize to interrupt. If you wouldn't mind saying your name for the record as well.
Ray May, Raymond May.
Thank you very much.
Okay. It was a wonderful collaboration, allowing us to develop great creative that won the distinguished Silver Tally Award. For those who are unfamiliar with Spectrum Reach, we are the advertising sales business of Charter Communications representing Comcast Cable here in Doña Ana County. I'd like to make a couple special thanks out to Liz Reed, Community and Constituent Service Manager, Lucy Rubio, Communications Coordinator, Joseph Vargas, Multimedia Coordinator, Pam Wood, Contract Administrator, and Fernando Marcias, County Manager. And to Al Marquez, our Senior Client Success Planner, for his work on planning the campaign and coordinating the campaign. And Joel Marquez, our producer, who worked on the spot. So Joel, you want to come up a minute and show him the work?
Hello, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. My name is Joel Marquez. I'm a producer at Kernel Spectrum Reach. It's a pleasure to be here today and to celebrate this moment with everybody here. So my task was to create a 30-second animated ad and bring it to life. In the pre-production phase, it all began with a script. And the script had to capture the audience of Doña Ana County. So with that script, I connected with my designers to create an animated design that looked and make sure we unified all the pieces of the creative, which was animated characters, backgrounds, motions. So now that we had the script and animated design, we put together a storyboard and we presented it to the county, and we got together with my editing animator and we collaborated on the movements, the timing, the voiceovers, everything from the talking mouse to everything that moved. We presented it to the fine people of the county, and what can I say? The rest is history. I had a great time, so without further ado, here are the videos.
Shaping the future of your community for the next 10 years can be done while you enjoy breakfast. In the time it takes to make pancakes, you can influence how billions of dollars can improve roads, schools, hospitals, first responders, agriculture, and senior programs. Fill out the 2020 census online by phone or by mail. By law, all census responses are completely confidential and everyone counts. Believe in the future of your community. Complete the 2020 census today. Doña Ana counts.
So we're going to go ahead with the presentation, and just to let the commission know and the public know that all the promotion materials that our team did was offered in English and Spanish languages.
Let him present it to the chair.
This is heavy.
Yeah, it is.
Much better behind the camera.
And if you won't talk to each other, you can pull your masks down. That way take a better picture.
Got it. Thank you.
Thank you.
So Liz, thank you so much for that. Liz, Lucid, Joseph, Susie, Corey, and I know the Spectrum Reach team. Thank you so much. I know there was such an effort for the 2020 census, trying to get people to fill it out, and I think we even continue to see why here in 2021 as we just approved the redistricting here locally. And so making sure that we had an accurate count was so important. So appreciate all your efforts in this particularly, and congratulations on winning the Silver Telly Award. Okay, we're moving on to consent agenda. Agenda items 3 through 8 that'll be approved in one motion. Are there any items from the consent agenda that commissioners would like to pull for separate consideration?
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Reynolds?
yes, I'd like to pull item 8 just for discussion and separate approval.
Okay, agenda item number 8. Are there any others? All right, so then we have, then can I get a motion to approve agenda items 3 through 7?
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Chaparro,
Second.
seconded by Commissioner Reynolds. Is there any input, comments, public input on agenda items 3 through 7? Okay. Brandy, will you call the roll, please? On agenda items 3 through 7.
Commissioner Ellens? Yes. Commissioner Reynolds?
Yes.
Commissioner Chaparro?
Yes.
Vice Chair Murillo Trujillo?
Yes.
Chair Sanchez?
Yes.
We do have 3 resolution numbers on that. Actually, I have 2. Item number 3, resolution number is 2021-126. Item number 6, 2021-127.
Okay. All right, we're looking at agenda item number 8. If I can get a motion and a second to approve.
I'll make a motion that we approve.
Okay, motion by Commissioner Reynolds. And is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Chaparro. Very good. All right, Commissioner Reynolds?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have one question. I know that, I believe that this is an item we also have on the ICIP. Am I correct?
Yes, sir. The construction portion of it, yes.
Correct. So I assume that this is a portion that simply is what we're going to do for design of the plans and investigation to make sure we're doing the right thing?
Right. Commissioner, if I may address your question, certainly the commission has already authorized it back in June when you approved the budget for this fiscal year, basically $590,000 in architectural fees. So that's already approved. This item on today's agenda basically increases that amount by $81,000. That is because, and I'm sure you and everyone is familiar in terms of just the surge in overall cost, because the project that was presented to you earlier has expanded, so has the overall cost of the project. We have been meeting with legislators, receiving very good response in terms of them assisting with monies related to this project. But I can suggest to you that uniformly, the legislators have responded in a very positive manner that the county is putting in some of its own capital, because in reality, the responsibility of housing the judiciary falls solely on the responsibility of the county. But here we're asking the state legislators to help us with the construction costs that are potentially between $9 and $11 million. It is very painful to kind of see those kind of costs associated with any project, but we are seeing it across the board in all construction projects. The original estimate of the $590,000 is an underestimation based on where the costs are currently at. Because the legislative session is beginning in mid-January, we're wanting to get this under contract and the commencement of the work. So all this item is not approving $672,000 because you already approved $590,000. This is to enhance the budget, and we're fortunate to be receiving a higher level of gross receipts tax income than what has been budgeted up to this point. So there is more than sufficient funds in the new monies that are coming in to cover this smaller cost.
My only clarification is that this is money that we won't be able to replace with ICIP money once it's approved.
No, you can't use ICIP for expenditures that you've already undertaken, but I think it's important for the county to recognize that it has a financial responsibility related to this project. Because candidly, if the session doesn't produce sufficient money to build it, we're still going to have that underlying responsibilities to come up with a method of financing whatever gap that there might be. But I think that this is a strong message that's well received by legislators who are going to be assisting the county in seeking construction funds for the project.
Thank you, Mr. Macias. Yeah, the only thing I wanted to do is to confirm that, in fact, we could not replace this with ICI money so that the public would know why we're doing this.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay, are there any other questions or comments on agenda item number 8? All right. Hearing none, then Brandy, will you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Ellens? Commissioner Reynolds?
Yes.
Commissioner Chaparro?
Yes.
Vice Chair Murillo Trujillo?
Yes.
Chair Sanchez.
Yes.
Item number 8 has a resolution number 2021-28.
Okay, that's moving on to agenda item number 9, which is the COVID-19 vaccine and booster employee incentive program. It's going to be presented by Mr. Macias, but can I get a motion and a second for approval? Moved by Commissioner Allens.
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Chaparro. Okay, Mr. Macias.
Again, Mr. Chairman, this is somewhat simple in its approach. We are asking the commission to authorize funding out of our ARPA funds that basically would act as an incentive to encourage all of our employees to become vaccinated with both shots, and basically to receive the booster upon proof of those 3 acts being into place. And again, proof would have to be provided. This will provide some additional revenue. Again, and a side benefit to it is that with the tremendous surge in the cost of living, this certainly would be, I think, very welcome by the employees and would be of sufficient benefit to act as a real incentive so that we can close the gap among existing county employees that have not been vaccinated, or certainly those that have not received their booster, or certainly with those to provide proof of vaccination to our HR department. So I am asking this in a similar manner to the way we requested additional basically it's a one-time allocation of money. It's a one-time utilization of the money. However, the money is distributed over the course of the remaining period of the fiscal year, and it will require people to take immediate action because the longer they wait, the less of the initial commitment will be available to them. Every pay period that passes without meeting or responding to this request or encouragement will mean that there is a smaller amount of money that would be allocated to that individual employee. But again, I believe that incentive programs clearly are legal and authorized within the parameters of the ARPA funding, and this approach is being used by countless municipalities across the nation.
Thank you, Mr. Macias. Are there questions or input from the commission? Commissioner Reynolds?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Macias. Question, is this, let's say someone already has the 2 vaccines or the 1 vaccine and the booster, are they eligible for this program?
Yes, sir, because they would have to part of the incentive is to make sure that they are fully disclosing to our HR department that they meet the requirements of being fully vaccinated along with the booster.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, any other questions? Comments, public input? Okay, Brandy, will you call the roll, please, on agenda item number 9?
Commissioner Ellens? Commissioner Reynolds?
Yes.
Commissioner Chaparro?
Yes.
Vice Chair Murillo Trujillo?
Yes.
Chair Sanchez?
Yes. Okay. On to agenda item number 10, which is a public hearing for an ordinance amendment to the Unified Development Code regulating cannabis establishments. Ms. Ainsworth, good morning. And if you wouldn't mind raising your right hand, do you swear and affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth and under penalty of law?
I do.
Okay, thank you.
And Mr. Chairman, let me just make some opening remarks related to this matter. I've asked Ms. Ainsworth. Ms. Ainsworth prepared a document, and I believe
Oh, we lost your feed there.
that the commission, if not, if we have copies, a revised,
Mr. Macias, do I have to, I know that you're speaking, do I swear you in as well, or?
no, this is just information for you.
Okay.
It's not testimony related to the
Okay,
actual
just wanted to make sure.
substance of it. It's just organizational or administrative.
Okay.
So basically what I've asked her to do, and it's part of the packet. Let's see, this is item number 10. And it's basically pages 44, 45, 46, and 47. So there were issues that were raised at the last meeting by members of the public. This is a concise breakdown of the categories or the feedback that the commission got from the public. And this is staff's review and discussion and recommended modifications. I'm saying that only to be very careful because I've also asked that they prepare some motions for consideration by the commission so that our record is clear on this matter. But I would ask that the chair allow Ms. Ainsworth to take it one topic at a time and then receive public input one topic at a time so that we can have a clear record of the changes that the commission will endorse or any other changes that the commission. So I'm going to ask Ms. Ainsworth, because I believe that there's approximately 6 distinct items. So if we, with your permission, if we can take them one at a time, just discuss that one item before we go to the next.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sounds good. Thank you, Mr. Macias.
Thank you.
Ms. Ainsworth.
Okay, I won't go over the full presentation again, but just to reiterate what is in the proposed cannabis ordinance. We have specific definitions related to cannabis and cannabis establishments. Cannabis-related uses added to Table 5.1, the land use classification matrix. Distance requirements, hours of operation, and best management practices for cannabis-related businesses have been added. And we also prohibit cannabis establishment and cannabis consumption area as a home occupation permit. And just also to reiterate, we held a public hearing on November 23rd, and staff was asked to review public input from that meeting. So summary of public input, the first point that was brought up was specific to permitting the cannabis producer in the T3 outright when it has the agricultural assessment. Staff has reviewed that particular request, and while we initially had discussed perhaps a special use permit in that zone, just looking at what is permitted throughout the county as far as agricultural, we permit agricultural uses in any zone when it's assessed as ag. And so the assessment requires at least 1 acre of land and it has to have been used traditionally for agricultural. And so as staff, we reevaluated our prior recommendation and determined that we should allow the cannabis producer and cannabis micro-business producer in any zone that allows agricultural with the assessment. And so that means that in any zone in the county, anyone who has the agricultural assessment will be able to have either a cannabis producer or a cannabis micro-business producer license. And that license is specific to growing the product, and it does allow for some assembling of the product. They can dry the product, they can package the product. The only thing they won't be able to do is the chemical extraction. We feel that this is appropriate because the growing of the cannabis and these other accessory uses that occur with growing of a product are already permitted for other types of crops. Also to clarify, the production, the growing of the product can occur either outdoor or indoor on these parcels where it will be permitted. So the new recommendation from staff is to allow the producer licenses in all zones where they are currently assessed as agricultural. So just to show that table, everywhere that it is red is where staff has revised the table from what we had previously recommended. You can see that across the board, you have A in most uses. In commercial districts and industrial districts, then it would be permitted outright regardless. You don't typically see agricultural in these zones, so they would not be assessed as ag, but those uses would be permitted as well.
Okay, but before you go there.
Okay,
So
so
if I
correct-
understood the summary, sorry for the speaking that was going on, the intent or at least a suggestion is, number one, we need a motion on the floor for approval. Then each one of these things, like for example, the one that was brought up, the suggested amendment from what was originally published, that we take each amendment and consider and approve it then.
that's
As
correct.
you-
Yes.
Okay, so then we'll get that started then. So can I get a motion and a second to approve agenda item number 10?
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Chaparro,
Second.
seconded by Vice Chair Murillo Trujillo. All right, so then now we would need, this would be the first one, right? The
Yes.
first amendment is to amend the zones or approve the permit, that means, let me try to permit cannabis producer in zones as noted in the recommended, in the agenda here. I don't know, I'm trying to figure out the way to word this.
Okay.
So so this is what, at least amended motion, at least from what I understand. So I need a motion to approve and permit cannabis micro business producer and cannabis producer in all zones where the property is assessed as agriculture and permitted within commercial and industrial sections. Is that correct?
That's correct.
It's, well, there's still the Ps within the commercial sections that were
Right.
changed.
Yes.
For permit.
He worded it correctly. Thank you.
Okay. So if I can get a motion for the amendment.
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Chaparro, seconded by Commissioner Reynolds. Is there any comments, questions on the proposed amendment?
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Reynolds?
Ms. Ainsworth, I have just one question.
Yes.
This approves both indoor and outdoor,
Correct.
correctly?
In the ordinance, the verbiage already exists that states that the growing can be done either outdoor or indoor. And just to clarify, early in the process, when we had presented a draft to the P&Z, we had initially intended to only allow the growing outdoors. And that was changed through the process, through dialogue with people who provided public input. So it will allow the growing outdoors and indoors.
Thank you. My question is, have we reduced the requirement for the filtering in the indoor growing? Have we addressed that at all?
We have not. Depending on the zoning district, buildings are permitted depending on the size of the lot. We have not made any changes to those permissions. And so we believe that that's adequate to serve the purposes as we determined from dialogue from people who provided the input. Now, the licenses do have different plant allowances. If it's a micro business producer, they are only allowed 200 plants, whereas the cannabis producer license allows up to 8,000.
8,000, correct. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Reynolds. Is there any other comments, questions from the board? Any public input on the proposed amendment? Okay, we have one in the back.
And again, Mr. Chairman, I would just encourage that the public input stay to this particular topic. If they have another concern or another topic, then we'll probably be coming to it later, or we'll come to it at the end of the discussion of these 6 different points.
Okay, correct. So this will be for the amendment. This is just for the amendment to allow for agriculture and produce. So if that's what your topic is, or at least you're going to speak on this, then you're more than well. Please go ahead and we'll come on up. And if you wouldn't mind raising your right hand. Do you swear and affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth under penalty of law?
Yes, sir, I do.
Very good. State your name for the record and please proceed.
My name is Derek Pacheco, for the record. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Board Commissioners. I just want to note that the land use matrix has been extremely difficult to understand this entire process. I believe you all copy and pasted the matrix uses from the city. To me, that never made sense. The city doesn't even have the same definitions for zoning. When I first saw the first proposal draft of the land use matrix, it was very empty. That made no sense to me. The matrix still looks very empty, and it still does not make sense to me. I've read the packet, I've read the drafts, I've talked with you all on several occasions. I'm still confused. The top matrix, I believe, reads for industry. It's empty. There should be an allowed use across the board there, and really across the matrix. I propose that you allow cannabis industry to look exactly like cannabis producer and have it allowed across the matrix. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pacheco. Is there any other public input on the proposed amendment? Okay.
Hello.
Good morning. If you wouldn't mind raising your right hand. Do you swear and affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth under penalty of law?
I do.
Very good. Thank you, sir. And if you want to state your name for the record?
My name is Dean Rigg. And just to further on that comment, the definitions that are in place for, let me just get to this real quick, for the cannabis industry versus the cannabis producer, I'm not sure why they exist. I think that you should look hard at the two terms and probably either integrate both, kind of like he said, because in the cannabis industry, you're only allowed a T2 with a special permit. If not, it's got to be industrial only. And I think, not for our benefit, but for the whole industry's benefit, you might have issues trying to get it manufactured at that time. With some of the things that you do with cannabis, you'll be limited onto where you'll be able to do that. At least I would maybe want to put a special use permit to allow that in those to to at least come to planning and zoning to, because I think that's going to probably going to explode just a little bit on that part once things get going and growing. And you'll probably need more room. So that's just my input. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Is there any other input on the proposed amendment? All right. Ms. Ainsworth, just for at least for my clarification and understanding, at least when they're talking on cannabis industry, it's almost specific to, like you had mentioned, the extraction, kind of the actual processing of the actual product versus the growing, packaging, et cetera. Is that correct?
That's correct, and I do have that point on, further on in the document. And I will explain again what the difference is and why the recommendation is the way it is. But if we could just stay on the next topic at this point. One of the comments that was made by the public was to allow micro businesses in this specific zone, which is the D2 and the D2L. We did look,
Mr. Chair.
and we had looked.
Commissioner, sorry. First, I just have a question of procedures. Should we go ahead and vote on this amendment before we move forward to the next one?
Correct. I think that was, I just wanted, I thought she
Okay.
was just expounding on the
Okay.
proposed amendment. Okay.
Thank
then-
you.
Thank you, Commissioner Reynolds. No, I appreciate that. So yes, I think if there's no
Sorry for the
other,
interruption.
no, if there's no other input, then Randy, if you call the roll on the proposed amendment to permit cannabis micro business producer and cannabis producer in all zones where assessed as agriculture and within the commercial, oh, sorry, is there Commissioner Ellens? The proposed amendment is that we allow cannabis micro business producer and cannabis producer across all zones assessed, or all properties assessed as agriculture, with the exception of those within the commercial C1, C2, which would then be permitted across the entire versus just agriculture.
Why are we excluding the
Mr. Macias?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Ellens, basically, it's a simple concept. If you've used your land for agriculture, you've grown tomatoes, alfalfa, onions, whatever, and you want to convert it over to cannabis, you can do it without having to go through a special use permit. It's just basically treating cannabis the same way as basically any other agricultural product. If historically you've used that land for agriculture or it's zoned for agriculture, then basically you can grow cannabis and you don't have to go through a special use permit and all of the hearings associated with that process. That's how basic this amendment is.
Thank you, Mr. Macias.
Why are the commercial districts excluded?
They're not excluded in those districts because those properties are not assessed as ag, then they can grow outright. It's permitted outright. So we don't require the agricultural assessment in those particular districts.
You know, that's the higher level of zoning, so it's permitted there anyway.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Macias. Thank you, Ms. Ainsworth, for helping with that.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Reynolds?
I'm sorry to interrupt again, but point of order. If Mr. Macias is talking about procedures, that's fine, but as he starts interpreting the ordinances and the amendments, he needs to be sworn in. Sir.
That's fine.
Will you swear me in just so I can?
Well, and Mr. Chair, actually, this is a legislative hearing.
Okay.
So you don't have to swear anybody in because it's legislative in nature. When it's quasi judicial in nature is when you need to have people sworn in because you're taking evidence.
Okay, well, thank you so much. I was, then if that's the case, then I apologize, and so then we won't move forward with swearing people in, so I apologize. Okay, so we have an amendment on the floor that's been motioned and seconded. If there's no other questions or input, then Randy, will you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Ellens?
Yes.
Commissioner Reynolds?
Yes.
Commissioner Chaparro?
Yes.
Vice Chair Murillo Trujillo?
Yes.
Chair Sanchez?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, move on to the next, well, then, this is going to be on the next item, correct?
Yes, so the next item is specifically to a comment regarding cannabis microbusinesses in the D2 and D2L, which are the medium-density residential. And you can look on the matrix, if they're assessed as ag, then they will be included where you can have the licenses to produce. The full micro business, which allows retail consumption areas and potentially extraction of the cannabis, we do not feel is appropriate in a residential district. In no other case do we allow a retail on a residential lot. We don't allow the heavier intensity uses. Additionally, if you're going to be doing commercial uses, such as the retail, such as the consumption area, such as the potential manufacturing, those are not things that can be done inside a residential structure. Commercial building requirements apply. And so it wouldn't be as simple as somebody designating a bedroom to do their retail or their manufacturing. They would actually have to construct a building that meets commercial building standards. They would have to comply with parking requirements, with landscaping requirements. That simply isn't feasible on most standard residential lots, and that's part of the reason it's not appropriate. But if they want to pursue, if they are assessed as ag and they want to pursue the microbusiness producer license, they are able to. They would be able to apply for a special use permit if they're not assessed as ag, if they wanted to do some kind of production, that is growing of the cannabis on their residential lot. In that case, because it may go to public hearing, then there could be conditions placed on that operation. We could restrict the number of plants, given, size constrictions of the lot. The P&Z or the BOCC, if it were to be appealed here, could impose additional restrictions if that special use permit was going to be approved. And so just to clarify, the uses that are allowed in a micro business, the standard micro business, in many cases are not appropriate on a residential lot, but there is the option to do the micro business producer if they're assessed as ag or if they pursue a special use permit. Okay, so no motion is required for that. Staff is not recommending any additional changes there.
Mr. Chairman, if I could impose, in order to kind of avoid having to come back to the topic, just a request as to whether there's any public input on that one item. It's that the staff is not, and management is not recommending that there be any changes to it, although it was an item that did come up in public discussion at the last meeting.
Okay, Mr. Macias. So if there's any input on the staff recommendation that microbusinesses are not allowed within the D2 and D2L zone? Or sorry, I should clarify, no changes within the D2, D2L zone.
Hi, Commissioner and Chair. My name is Robbie Tafoya. We had spoke already about this. We have been doing our growing at our property for the last 10 years since the program had started with the state for personal use. Now we've gotten into the point to where we're not able to produce the amount of plants that we needed before, and so it gave us a step to try to turn into a micro business. So the opportunity we have now is to try to use what we have and grow with it so we can be able to compete in the state, especially here because again, we are in an area where we can't go anywhere else because of the Border Patrol, so we can only service our own community here and the medical patients. So I really hope that you guys take the time and think about this with the special use permits. I understand with the zoning, because of where we're at. When we first moved to our property and built it, there was no zoning there that was like this. You guys kind of built around us and put your zoning there. So it put us out in that fact. And now we're running up against that, how many plants? Because we put in for a micro producer's license for 100 plants or under. On our property, we know that we could do 50 plants. It doesn't mean we have to do 100. If we can do 50, we can at least start to get into this so we can be able to produce. We're more of a boutique. We use it for specialties. They use it for certain type of ailments for people anxieties. And so we're not out there just doing for huge commercial crops of this, it's specialty. And so we would really think that the commission has to look at a little bit of the privacy issue on letting the public know that we're going to be growing, in our area, to go out and put out a notice and say, hey, you guys are going to have, you could add a lot more problems because kids could be coming over. So with that, we've already had this authority to be able to do this through the state. We still have it again up to a certain amount of, we just hope that you guys can look at being able to find a place for your micro businesses to start. Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Reynolds?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Go ahead. I have a question for Ms. Ainsworth. If I understand it correctly, a situation like Mr. Tafoya's here can actually be addressed through a special permit?
Yes, that's correct, unless they were assessed as ag. In that case, they could do the micro business.
So really, we don't need to change anything in order to address his concern? Okay.
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay, any other input, public input? Okay, then we'll move on to the next item here, which is on removing the special use permit requirements in all zones.
Okay, and this was a similar comment to the previous one with regard to requiring the special permit in certain areas. Now, this came up for discussion previously when we went to the P&Z, and the comment was basically not wanting to alert surrounding property owners that they were going to be growing cannabis. But the other side of it is that if you live in a residential home and your lots are relatively small or standard size, you don't have the agricultural spacing that occurs in some areas of the county where people have larger lots, then we feel that it's appropriate for those adjacent neighbors to be informed about what might be occurring. The process for the special use permit allows us to mail notices to those residents within so many feet, and they have the opportunity to provide input and to be informed of what might be occurring there. And we still maintain that that is appropriate in the certain districts where those things, where the properties are close enough together, it's a strictly residential neighborhood, and there could be an impact on neighbors. In some cases, the neighbors may not care. They may think it's fine. You can grow it for personal use anyway. They don't need to be informed if their neighbor is growing for personal use. That's already occurring. But they may want to know if someone's going to have a larger operation. They may not care. In most cases, we may not receive any input, but we believe that they have the right to be aware if there's going to be a more commercial type of production within their neighborhood. And so that was the reason why we left the special use permit in some cases, for example, for retail in certain zones, for the cannabis micro business, which does allow the retail, it allows the consumption areas, and it allows the processing of the product as well. And so we maintain that the recommendations we've made are appropriate. So there is no further change at this point.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Reynolds?
Thank you. For special use permit, let's say that I have an area, half acre or so, and I want to apply for a special permit in a residential area, and two of my neighbors, or 2 out of 50, say they don't want me to do it. How do we resolve that?
Well, it does go through public hearing, and like I said, we can make recommendations to place conditions. We can reduce the number of plants that can be grown. We can require additional conditions such as screening or fencing. Those are things that are within the purview of both the P&Z and the BOCC. And so often when we do have that public dialogue, while the people who are in opposition may not be completely satisfied, they may be more agreeable to it if they know that there will be conditions and that the production will be maintained at a smaller scale. And so that's part of the purpose of the special use permit, is so that those who have concerns can have those concerns addressed, and perhaps we can reach some kind of compromise through the process.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Ms. Ainsworth.
Okay, is there any other questions on the special use permit process? Any public input? We have one, it looks like.
Hello.
Good morning.
Good morning. My name's Thomas Moore. The chart shows us a special use permit for also retail. And that was to get rid of the special use for all cannabis use. The problem with the special use permit for retail in the small rural areas, time is of the essence. And I know the special use permit takes months and months. Applications for retail are due the 1st of the month, January. And I'm specifically talking about Lyon. There's a building there that I own, been a member of that community for a long time, that is Zone T4. It has been retail back in the 30s. It's right on Highway 28. It's the main section of Lyon where Little Toad Creek's trying to put in a restaurant bar on the corner. And Lyon, as you know, has had a hard time. They need development. So with the special use, what we're worried about is not the application and going through it and getting approved. It is the time element on how many retail licenses they're going to give. So every time you delay it, a little community like that loses out. So our concern is this building it should be T5 anyway. It was, when they did it, they just did it the whole row. Well, there's certain buildings there that was a grocery store, it was a bar in the 30s. I mean, they've been T5 forever. And because they're zoned T4, under your chart, we'd have to get a special use permit. This is just for retail. It's had retail for years. So I just wish you'd consider the time element of a special use permit for an area we're not growing, it's just retail. Retail's been there since the 30s. And the community needs it. And part of the deal with the cannabis bills was to help rural areas, not just around the city. And Lyon needs the help. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there any other comments?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Allens?
I have a question for the witness.
Mr. Moore, if you would mind also. Sorry, yeah, Commissioner Allens had a question.
Sure.
Does the city require a special use permit in retail?
No, because Lyon is an unincorporated area. It's not incorporated, so all our permits comes from Doñana County.
Okay, could you summarize your problem?
Yes, sir. We want to apply for a retail dispensary license. We have a building there. It's T4, which would require, under that chart, a special use permit. The building's been retail for 50, 60 years. So there's no changing in, it's just like you were just talking about on the micros, that if you've been growing crops for all these years, you don't need to get a special use. We've been selling items, it's just a different item, it's cannabis now. And our worry about the special use permit is the time element it takes, because they're only going to allow so many dispensary retail licenses. And we would really like to get one in Lyon. And every delay, you never know what the state says, all the licenses are gone. So we're ready to go, but but we don't have a special use permit, but we have a property that sells retail.
So you are a cannabis micro business?
No, we want to be just a retailer.
Just-
It's just like a store,
Okay.
following all their regulations.
Okay, I understand.
Are you operating as a retail operation right now? Are you
Yeah,
operating right now?
Yeah, it's my building. I own 2 buildings.
Yes, but are you operating it as a retail right now?
Yes.
Because you could be grandfathered in.
That was another point I was going to bring up, the grandfather clause.
Christina? Why are you requiring a special permit?
Okay, I mean, there were, through the discussions that we had, there were various reasons for that. And one is that the T4 in the smaller communities that are throughout the county encompasses a major portion, in some cases, of those communities. And I think we have an image here. I'm just going to scroll through and see if I can find it. But you can see the T4 encompasses quite a bit of those communities in some cases. And that was the reason we were leaving it as a special use permit. Now, there's 2 options here. One is to go with the staff's recommendation for a special use permit, with the further explanation that the state, we learned just a couple of days ago, is not going to be requiring the zoning letter with applications for licenses. What they're going to be doing now is just requiring the applicants to go back to the communities and ensure that they comply with the zoning. The state will then let us know when they issue licenses so that we can follow up. So they will not need that zoning letter up front. And we will be accepting special use applications as soon as this ordinance is approved, even though it does not go into effect for 30 days, so that we can begin the process of processing those and hopefully getting them as soon as possible. The other option, and staff is agreeable to this, is allowing the retail in T4 where retail is already allowed on a small scale. So retail is permitted in T4, but only under a certain square footage. So we would want to mirror the same requirements for that particular retail. So it's, the pleasure of the commission. If you want to make a motion to allow the retail outright, as long as it meets the small retail criteria that is already permitted.
Thank you, Ms. Ainsworth.
Is cannabis,
If that's their pleasure.
is cannabis permitted in retail if the sole purpose is medical?
If we are allowing the retail, it would be for recreational consumption as well, which would be allowed in micro business or in retail establishments.
Okay.
Yes, okay. So if the pleasure of the commission is to allow the retail outright in the T4, then I would ask that you make a motion to allow the retail outright in T4, meeting the same small retail criteria that's already permitted.
Mr. Chair?
Commissioner Reynolds?
Yeah, my opinion is, looking at this map we've got up here, that I think we should still, require a supplemental.
A special use permit?
Special use permit. However, I also agree that if we've got someone who's already doing retail in the area, that we should grandfather them in. Okay, if they can prove that they've been doing retail already there, I don't see a problem with that. I think the real question here is looking at the T4 here and the blue on the screen.
Yes.
I mean, if we had just told everyone there they could do a micro business without any kind of oversight, we might have 15 people here trying to do the same business, which would certainly make it difficult for anyone to succeed. So that's puts the people who do want to do this and do it well at risk if we let everyone else right next door compete with them. So I think a special use permit is actually a benefit to the people trying to get one and trying to do the right thing, and also gives us some control over the density of the competition in areas like this. So for that reason, I think we should keep it with this, but I still think we should let the people who are already doing retail have the ability to grandfather in and still maintain some sort of competitive benefit to the early people. That's just, so not everyone fails, that's my point. If we let everyone do it, then too many people are going to fail. And it's a huge investment.
Thank you, Commissioner Reynolds. Is there any other comments?
It wouldn't be burdensome necessarily. Mr. Macias is asking if it would be burdensome to determine if a property is already grandfathered. And the answer is no. It's easy to look at records, business registrations that have been issued, aerial photos, and determine if a property has already been used for retail. Okay, so to make it very clear in the ordinance, we would request that a motion be made to allow the retail, the cannabis retail in T4 if retail was already being done on those properties at the time that this ordinance was approved.
Commissioner Reynolds?
Yes, okay. Is there any consideration for density if we allow the retail so that, let's say there's 5 people that want to do it in the same block? Should we say something about that? Or
There are already distance requirements from establishments.
Okay.
So that has already been built into the ordinance.
Great. Then, yeah, I'd make a motion that we actually grandfather in anyone who can prove that they've already done retail
In the T4.
in T4, yes.
I second.
Okay, we have a motion for an amendment by Commissioner Reynolds, seconded by Vice Chair Murillo Trujillo. Is there any input?
Mr. Chairman, I asked for the motion to be clarified. I didn't quite hear Commissioner Reynolds, so if you can repeat the motion, thank you.
So if I understand, the motion on the floor is to amend the ordinance to allow or to grandfather in anybody who is actively a retailer in T4 to be allowed, to be permitted as a cannabis retailer without the special use permit requirement.
Thank you.
Did I get that? Okay. Is there any input?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Allens?
Christina, what is a T5?
The T5 is the highest intensity use in the transect zones, and it is typically what you would consider the town center. So if you looked at a big city, you would be looking at a downtown. If you're looking at our smaller town sites throughout the county, then it would be the area where you might have the post office, a couple of retail shops, and so you would have the higher density commercial, well, not high density commercial, but downtown typical uses. And so that's why you see in the T5 that the retail is permitted, because it would be an area where you would see commercial establishments, offices perhaps, depending on the type of town or city that you're in.
Is the previous witness satisfied with the proposed amendment?
I believe that he is, since he's left the room.
Okay.
I myself have just some, I don't agree with the proposed amendment, and mainly because one of the things around having a cannabis retailer is going to be that it's considered a cannabis consumption area. And I think in the next section, the next thing we will be considering is going to be outdoor consumption within a consumption area. I just, within a community, regardless of how it's zoned and how it's grandfathered, my concern is that if it's a T4, that I think people in the public should be aware that it's going to be, they're going to be retailer, there's going to be a possible retail there because it's not just retail, it's consumption area. And so if people will be consuming, it's like a bar. It's like, just I think of it from that perspective. Would we just say you're already a retailer, now you can open up a bar here and consume alcohol without notifying the public? I think of it in similar ways. I'm all for making sure that that we have businesses that thrive in Doña Ana County, but I also want to make sure that our residents are aware of what's going to be coming in around them, just so that they can make a decision and work to ensure either they can support it or they can come and oppose it, just like any other process. So just my 2 cents, but I don't know, is there any public input on the proposed amendment to allow T4 retailers to be grandfathered in to be permitted as cannabis retailers?
Derek Pacheco for the record. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Commissioners. Just to echo off your last comment, I think we really need to work on destigmatizing this plant a lot harder than we're doing right now. To keep comparing it to alcohol is not right. It's not alcohol. It's medicine. We have this cannabis in a medicinal program before recreational. Alcohol does not belong in any sort of medicinal program anywhere. This is more like walking into your CVS, buying a bottle of Tylenol, and taking care of your headache, which you can do just about anywhere. You can consume drugs to help you. This is not alcohol. Please consider that. Thank you.
Ms. Pacheco, if you wouldn't mind, I have a question. Just simply, I understand, you're talking in retailer, but would it be the same that you can consume in a retailer? Because that's what we're allowing here, is that it's not just medicinal. Medicinal is under a completely different, I don't think it's regulated in the same way as recreational, and I think that's what we're discussing here.
It's the same product.
And if it's retail or recreational, they can consume on the premises as per our ordinance. And that's why I say I compare it to that, because yes, I understand the destigmatization. I am a supporter of cannabis, CBD, and the use of alternative medicines, because it's definitely, when you compare it to opioids and things like that, I think there's a shift that needs to happen and that we need to be more open to it. But my concern is still, I think, the consumption of it. It's not the retail specifically. I think it's just that we're going to allow consumption on the premises.
And people are already consuming all over that community. And so what the state has done is built a framework around correcting this and adding to the GRT. And by allowing an individual, a business owner, to determine what works for that building, as approved by the building code, by the board, by all sorts of factions that have something to say about a small business owner running a business, it's already hard enough. A consumption area doesn't belong in most buildings. Most buildings in that area are too small, and you just wouldn't do something like that. And so I say leave it up to the individual, leave it up to the state, which has already built the framework, like I mentioned, and please allow the consumption, the retail to be allowed.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Chaparro.
thank you. Thank you for the comments, but I, along with you, Chairman, am slightly concerned about the consumption. In my job, what I do, I show up to court, and not only is there DUI under the influence of alcohol, there's also DUI under the influence of marijuana, cocaine, heroin. So I think this commission also has to take that in mind. I'm all for retail cannabis, but by the same token, the protection of the community has to come into this decision as well. Because I understand most people will use cannabis in a way that helps them, medicine, as you mentioned, Mr. Pacheco, but there's always those individuals that will consume too much, whether it be alcohol or cannabis. And we have to bear in mind that we need to protect the community from those certain individuals. Thank you.
Okay. Now, Mr. Pacheco, do you have, and if you'll keep it brief.
Derek Pacheco for the record. Just to that last comment, we also have framework for that in place. We have the sheriff's department, we have the city police department, and we don't regulate alcohol consumption. You can go get wasted at a bar and drive off. But we've trusted our elected officials, such as the sheriff's office and our officers, to handle this, and I think they do a pretty good job. If they're not doing a good job, maybe we need to help them with some more resources. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, can I chime in just with a perspective? Again, with the motion that Commissioner Reynolds has proposed, if that doesn't go forward, then basically this T4 zoned areas, they go through a special use permit.
Correct.
So what is going to be the basis to deny it?
I think it becomes it's just, I think for me in particular, it's a notification of the areas and the individuals in the community that
Absolutely.
that they've applied for a permit. It's not so much preventing it from happening, it's just I would like the community to have a voice to understand, do they support this, oppose it?
Right. But that also gives the community the sense that they can stop it from occurring, and technically, legally, I don't think that that would be sustained. Perhaps the solution is to require that notice be given, notice be posted, basically that this particular product is available for sale, just like they put lottery tickets, just like they put that they have cigarettes for sale. There can be those kind of notice provisions in there. But I think, again, the grandfathering is going to be based on what now I'm understanding to be kind of a limited number of these establishments throughout the county. And again, what we're going to do is require them to go through a process, but that process can also be accomplished by requiring notice provisions to be posted at the store and visible to the public. Again, it's just a suggestion in terms of seeing if we reach some kind of agreed upon resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Macias.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Owens.
Fernando, how would posting a notice give the surrounding area an opportunity to stop the sale?
Most retail operations in any of the small community already has a clientele base within that very community. So if you give notices, even a notice ahead of time before the actual sales are to occur, basically the community coming in and out of that store is going to be aware that that's going to be a future site for utilization of cannabis-related sales. And I'm sorry, I mean, if you go up and you come anywhere close to any store that has an outdoor activity, it is very visible before you actually go into the store or approach the area. So what you're trying to do is give notice to the local community, not someone who's kind of driving by and sees a sign and says, hey, I want to stop here. Basically, the concern is, will the local community understand that cannabis sales are going to take place at what has been a historically used property for commercial sales? Are we adding cannabis to the list of items that are available to be sold? And then Commissioner Sanchez's perspective is that people are going to be out there in front of the store basically smoking, and shouldn't we be giving notice? But the primary purpose for notice is for the surrounding community, and they certainly can be aware of it by the posting of notices like they do for other kind of products.
And Mr. Macias, if you wouldn't mind me clarifying, so it's not so much that they'll be outdoors. That's going to be our next item to discuss, is whether we're going to allow this to be, whether cannabis can be consumed outdoor in a consumption area. But as it is written right now that we're considering, it's just indoor within the facility or within the business that they can consume. But I think it's, for me, it is the idea that they can be consuming in the business. It's not, so just.
Well, I mean, state law basically prohibits smoking indoors in terms of that.
But it says here this is 350-502 G1A, an indoor cannabis consumption area limited to consumption by qualified patients or reciprocal participants may be located inside any cannabis retailer, provided that smoking of cannabis products in such consumption areas is only allowed if the cannabis consumption area occupies a separate and distinct area inside the building from which smoke does not infiltrate other indoor workplaces or public places where smoking is otherwise prohibited pursuant to the D. Johnson Clean Indoor Air Act. So it's in that we're going to allow indoor consumption so long as it meets those requirements.
Right, and that's going to be quite a bit of a challenge unless people want to invest in a completely separate room where there can be no filtration of that smoke nor a danger to any other member of the public going in.
But they're still allowed, is
Yes.
my, they can if they want to make the investment.
Okay.
Commissioner Owens?
So by posting notices, that then leaves it up to a member of the public to choose or not to choose shopping there?
That would be my interpretation as well.
Okay.
Okay, is there any other comments or input on the proposed amendment from Commissioner Reynolds? Okay, Brandy, will you call the roll?
This is on the amendment.
Correct, this is on Commissioner Reynolds' amendment on allowing T4 retailers within T4 be grandfathered in as cannabis retailers.
Commissioner Ellens,
Yes.
Commissioner Reynolds,
Yes.
Commissioner Chaparro,
Yes.
Vice Chair Murillo Trujillo, Chair Sanchez.
No. That amendment is passed 4-1. Okay, so we're now to cannabis, are we now with this number 5, is it permitting outdoor smoking? Is that our next one? Or cannabis industries and other zoning, okay.
Right, so the next item, or the next point of public input that we received was regarding for allowing cannabis industries and other zoning designations. And I think here it's important to provide a distinction between the cannabis producer and the cannabis industries. These are definitions that came from the state, and there are different types of licenses, and that's the reason that we have different definitions. But the key component in the cannabis industry is number 5, manufactures cannabis products. And so that's related to the extraction and basically changing the chemical composition of cannabis, which requires specialized manufacturing machinery. There's different processes that might be taking place. There's different methods of doing that. But among those methods is the use of ethanol and other flammable chemicals that could be stored in very large quantities. So if you're looking at a large-scale manufacturing use where there is specialized equipment, where there's storing of potentially flammable or hazardous products, then you're looking at a true manufacturing or industrial use. Those are not uses that are related to agriculture, and those types of uses, which are also regulated in the building code. The building code designates those types of uses as F1 or H, which are the high industry and hazardous occupancies. Those types of uses are only permitted in heavy commercial zoning districts and industrial zoning districts. It's not appropriate to allow that type of use just anywhere in the county or in relation to an agricultural use. In no other case do we allow that. If you're growing a product, you do some assembling, some packaging, that's appropriate. But if you're completely changing that product through a chemical process and using specialized equipment, then that is a manufacturing use, which is not something that should be permitted in just any zoning district. And I want to make that clear. So staff is not recommending any further changes to the matrix, where we would allow the cannabis industries only in the heavy commercial zoning districts and in the industrial zoning districts.
Mr. Chair. Commissioner Reynolds.
Ms. Ainsworth, can you go back to the grid, please? Thank you. Mr. Chair?
Commissioner Reynolds?
Yeah, Ms. Ainsworth, explain to me now, there are several stages of processing available for cannabis. Obviously, growing, harvesting, curing it is what we call, or basically drying it out. Then from there, it can either be packaged, distributed, and packaged and distributed without any modification to the product itself.
Correct.
Okay, help me understand what I'm seeing here on the chart to say that those are allowed in which areas, because that's not industrial, that's basically growing, harvesting, producing, packaging, shipping.
So if you have, if you're permitted to do the cannabis micro business producer or cannabis producer, you are allowed to do all of those things that you just stated. The only thing you can't do is actually process the product and create a new product from the crop. The micro business, the cannabis micro business does allow that process, the processing and manufacture. However, that is a smaller scale. And that's why the micro business producer, or the micro business is permitted in some cases outright and in some cases with special permit, because you are allowed to do those additional things on a smaller scale. When you're looking at the cannabis industry, you are allowed to do that on a very large scale. And that is what we don't feel is appropriate in some of these zoning districts that are agricultural or residential.
Okay, so as I understand this, this item, then we're only talking about the cannabis industry
Correct.
production. We're not talking about the cannabis producers.
That's right.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
Okay, is there any other comments on this topic on the cannabis industry in other zoning designations other than industrial zones?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Allens?
what is the difference between a cannabis microbusiness and a cannabis microbusiness producer?
The
I can't find it.
The cannabis microbusiness producer only allows the growing of the plants and the associated uses such as drying, curing, packaging. The cannabis microbusiness allows the retail, the consumption areas, and the manufacture of products. And so that is the distinction there.
All right, because I could not find a definition of cannabis microbusiness producer in the book. I see cannabis microbusiness defined, but cannabis microbusiness producer is not.
Okay, so if you look at the screen now, it has cannabis producer microbusiness. I think that should be, it should have been cannabis microbusiness producer. Is a cannabis producer at a single licensed premises that cultivates and possesses no more than 200 total mature cannabis plants at any one time. And so, as I mentioned, this does not allow the retail, the consumption area, or the manufacturing. It's strictly a producer license.
Well, all I'm saying is it's not in the package.
It's not in your packet. Okay. And I apologize for that.
I do see it here on page 60 of the PDF, which is, yeah, page 60 of 112 is what I see in my packet.
And that is part of the packet that's in front of you. It also says page 12 at the bottom of it, but it's page 60 of 112.
Okay. Going back to the previous exhibit, UDC zoning districts allowing cannabis uses. You skipped.
Commissioner Ellens, forgive me for
we go.
imposing Commissioner Sanchez. Would you remove your mask because it is a little bit difficult to hear you?
Why do you need a special use permit for a cannabis microbusiness when cannabis microbusiness producer and cannabis producer are allowed if agricultural?
And the reason for that is because the micro business allows the retail, the consumption area, and the manufacturing process. The cannabis micro business producer limits the operation to growing the plants and then some associated uses such as packaging, drying of the product, and curing of the product. But there are no storage of chemicals, there's no retail operation, and there's no consumption area. So in the cannabis micro business, that it does allow those additional heavier uses, the special use permit is appropriate.
What are the changes in T3 as compared to the chart that was produced at the last meeting?
In the T3, we are now allowing, and you can see in red, we added some As on the table, including in the T3. We previously did not allow the producer in T3 with the agricultural assessment. Now we are recommending that that be permitted in the T3 as well as all zoning districts where agriculture is currently permitted with the assessment, as well as in the commercial districts where we currently allow agricultural.
I thought during the presentation originally that a greenhouse needed a special use permit, but I don't see that requirement.
Well, in our current zoning ordinance, without these amendments, we require the special use permit in certain zoning districts for a greenhouse. When this ordinance is adopted, as we are currently discussing it, then that would no longer be required if you have a cannabis producer operation, because these new additional uses would permit you to do that without the special use permit, if you're strictly a producer and you have the agricultural assessment.
Okay.
Okay. I think I'd seen two members of the public that wanted to come speak on this. We'll start, Mr. Butcher, we'll come to you next, if you don't mind. We'll allow this woman to speak first.
I just wanted to clarify something. Oh, I'm sorry.
And say your name for the record.
Fox, for the record.
Thank you.
I just wanted to clarify one point for you guys under manufacturing, which is that currently the manufacturing license is split into 4 levels. So you need a manufacturing license to package and label your product. If you're a producer, packaging and labeling isn't under the producer license, it's a level 1 manufacturing license. So level 1 is packaging and labeling. Level 2 is infused like edibles and topicals. I can't remember what level 3 is. I have it on my phone. I can pull it out if you need me to. And level 4 is the level of manufacturing license that is for like volatile gases.
Okay, very, very good. Are there any questions?
Level 3 is like a press, so no gases are involved.
Okay.
So if you say that a cannabis producer cannot do any manufacturing, you're saying that they cannot package and label their own product. They're going to have to, I don't know, put it in a Rubbermaid and take it somewhere and contract with somebody to package and label it for them. So you may want to make an exception that those cannabis producers can do manufacturing, but only at a level 1, which would allow them to package and label their own product.
Okay. Thank you for that. Mr. Pacheco?
Derek Pacheco for the record. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, commissioners. I think what's being forgotten here and overcomplicated is the simple fact that manufacturing is our #1 priority in this state and in this country. The North American Free Trade Agreement sent all our jobs offshore. This is our chance to do something about that and be proud New Mexicans that we actually figured it out without overcomplicating it. By not allowing industry in your small communities, you are essentially taking the value-added producer opportunity away from these people. You're saying that you can grow green chile, but you can't make the salsa. That's not right. You're taking the jobs away from these communities by taking manufacturing out. Furthermore, you have to keep in mind that cannabis microproducer licenses can be stacked at a single licensed facility. So if you're worried about pounds and pounds and ounces and liters of product being produced in your communities, you've got it all wrong. It absolutely can be allowed by stacking licenses. So make this easy on everyone. Disallow supercritical extraction to level 4. Disallow that use in your communities. But be at the forefront of innovation and allow these people to feed themselves, not by chemical reactions, such as Mrs. Ainsworth has described. We can use heat and pressure. We can use ice and water. The industry is full of innovators, and we need to be at that forefront. Please allow industry to stay in our communities.
Hello, my name is Dean Rigg. And I just wanted to reiterate kind of what I said the last time. If you take a look at your zoning districts, your cannabis micro businesses, it does go across the board with permitted and special use permits across the board for the different zoning districts. I would recommend that the council put that same matrix in place for cannabis industry, because it's the products that this creates, the oils, the creams, the lotions, the edibles, the different types of products produced from cannabis. It's going to be in a lot higher demand than probably just the leaf. And so eventually that's going to be in high demand. And if you only have it at a micro business level, you'll never be able to keep up in Doña Ana County. And you're limiting the access to it by only allowing C3 and then the industrials only. Even if you just did the matrix similar to the cannabis micro business, I think that would be beneficial. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Ainsworth, just wondering, because when I'm looking at the definition of a cannabis manufacturer, is that only within the cannabis, considered within cannabis industry, or where is the cannabis manufacturer fall into? Because I know there's discussion only around one line around the cannabis producer, and then it mentions cannabis manufacturers, and then there is the definition. But where, under what zones, what businesses are they considered a manufacturer?
Okay, so, this is where it becomes a little bit complicated. There was some public input just now regarding the different licenses that the state has for manufacturers. We do not have this, our definitions are different. And I stated already, if you're a producer, what that allows, what is allowed with an agricultural use is that drying, curing process, you're allowed to package. If they're required to have a separate license at the state level, then that's a separate issue. But in our zoning ordinance, as we're looking at it now, if you're a producer, you will be able to do all of those things. What you will not be able to do is the heavy industrial manufacturing, which, as I already stated, is similar to other high-intensity manufacturing uses, which we do not allow just anywhere. They have to be in a heavy commercial zoning district or industrial, and it's not appropriate to allow that heavy industrial use in other zones where you could potentially be next door to a residential property, a subdivision. Even an agricultural area, it's not appropriate to have a huge manufacturing plant in those areas of the county, and that's what you would be allowing. If you're a micro business, you can do that at a smaller scale, and we have made provisions for allowing it in many of the zoning districts except for the high-density residential. And so we believe that we have accommodated all of these different uses where appropriate and where other similar uses are allowed. And nowhere, in no other community, will you see heavy manufacturing and industrial uses in zones that are outside of heavy commercial or industrial. And I'm taking a pretty strong stand from a staff level that it's not appropriate to allow them in other zoning districts.
Thank you, Ms. Ainsworth. Is there any other comments or questions from the commission? Commissioner Reynolds?
Mr. Chair, this is, for me, this is getting a little too confusing, because it sounds like I'm hearing you say that the state has designations in their vocabulary, and we have separate designations in our vocabulary, so we can't, one doesn't actually equate to the other. Am I correct?
With regard to the manufacturing, yes. From what was stated here, and I have not looked at it in the state's regulation, but what was stated was that there's different levels of manufacturing. What we consider manufacturing in our zoning ordinance and in our building code is the heavy use where you are using chemicals, specialized equipment, and completely changing a product. And you're using chemicals that you would not want stored in a residential neighborhood. If you're simply processing a plant, packaging it, that's not considered manufacturing. That's assembling. That's something else that is permitted with an agricultural use. And so while we're not making all of the distinctions that the state does, I can clearly tell you that if you're not going to be using chemicals and conducting a process at a high scale, at a very heavy scale, then you would be allowed to do that in the micro business. If you're just assembling, curing, drying, packaging, then you can do that with your producer license.
Okay. There's one more, thank you, Ms. Ainsworth. There's one more thing I'm also confused about. Chair Sanchez and I just attended an opening at WTEC in Chamberino. Isn't that correct? And they're actually going to be making cables for solar and for electrical transmission lines, and then eventually they're hoping to, in phase 3, to actually start a smelting plant so they can actually turn some of their wires, their raw material into wiring at that plant. And now, wouldn't you consider that heavy manufacturing?
Yes, and they are actually zoned for that use. When they go into the smelter and heavier types of manufacturing uses, they will be required of rezoning, and they are aware of that.
Okay, so, and you also agree that Chamberino is the rural community you're talking about here.
Right, and that's a situation that occurred years ago, decades ago. If somebody came in today next to a small community and wanted to zone industrial, I highly doubt that that would be approved. Staff would not recommend approval. I don't believe the P&Z would recommend approval, and I think it would be very tough for this commission to recommend approval. However, that condition already exists, and that is open. If somebody wants to come in and apply for a heavy commercial or industrial zone somewhere in the county, they have the right to do that. It doesn't guarantee that it will be approved, but if circumstances indicate that an area is transitioning, if there's an area where a lot of industrial is appropriate and it's starting to transition to that, then it may be appropriate to rezone areas if we need more industrial areas in the county. Currently, they're limited to certain areas, but that doesn't mean that as development occurs, as we see a further need for industrial and we're running out of space in areas that we currently have, then we do need to relook at that, and there's the option to rezone other areas.
Just thank you, Ms. Ainsworth, Mr. Chair. This is an observation. I'm focusing desperately on trying to get more jobs into the rural community, and manufacturing jobs seem to be good for us and good for the community as well. WTC is supposed to hire some 300 people over the next 3 to 5 years. It seems like it's going to be a boom for the Chamberino area, and I'm hoping to replicate that. So I don't think we should move right now to say absolutely we're going to allow commercial cannabis production, manufacturing out in every community. And I'm not saying that, but I am leaning towards saying we should be very open-minded to considering the possibility of creating other industrial areas for manufacturing for cannabis. That's, I think, for the community's benefit. And so just, I'd like to make sure we don't rule that out totally and be open-minded when people apply for those and maybe bring it before the board so we can consider it. That's just my 2 cents.
Absolutely.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions from the commission? Mr. Pacheco, I know you have your hand up, but I know you've spoken already on this one item, so I'm just going to move on, or at least ask the commission if, before we move on, is there any amendments or anything else that wants to be considered at this point? I'll open it up. Okay. All right. So now we're on to the 5th item, which is permitting outdoor smoking.
Okay, so one of the points of discussion at the last meeting was why the ordinance was not permitting outdoor smoking in consumption areas. The way the draft was initially prepared and presented, we were restricting the consumption areas to indoor only, where you had to have a designated area, there had to be a true separation, it had to be ventilated properly. And so the question was, why were we not allowing the smoking of cannabis products outdoors in outdoor consumption areas? So after staff discussion, the primary reason for that was because the smoke from cannabis, if it's in the ambient air, you could potentially inhale it and have, become altered in your state. And that was part of the reason, or the main reason for that. It is possible to consume cannabis in other forms, so it doesn't necessarily have to be smoked. And so after that discussion, we determined that if it's the will of the commission, we would be agreeable to permitting the consumption areas outdoors, as long as they do have the distance requirements that are already built into the ordinance, and they have a designated area. So if it's the will of the commission, I did provide some language. You would need to amend section 350-502G 1A to include the word indoor for the indoor consumption areas. Is that correct, or should it say outdoor? Okay, for indoor consumption areas. And section 350-502G 1B1 to be changed to smoking of cannabis products is allowed outdoors in cannabis consumption areas.
Okay, Commissioner Reynolds?
Yes, I would like to have a discussion about possible addition to this. I would say that if we're doing outdoor areas, I think it should not be totally open to the public. I think we should require that some sort of containment area 5 or 6 feet high should not make it not totally accessible by the public or easily accessible by the public in areas where they're going to smoke outside as part of the business. The reason I say that is just for what you're saying, is the contact high is what we call it, but also because it encourages people to congregate around these areas, on purpose to try to take advantage of that, I guess, or be a part of that without actually contributing to the business, number one. And number two, it allows people who aren't legally allowed to participate in the consumption of marijuana, 15, 16, 17, teenagers, children, to possibly want to try to get close to that without any kind of controls. So I would appreciate some sort of fenced area be required that's 5 to 6 feet high, where they're going to consume outside around businesses, and make the only access is through the retail area, except for emergency exits. That's just my feeling. I don't know if anybody agrees on that, but I think that gives us the best of both worlds, the ability to consume outside and still protect the public to some degree.
Mr. Chairman, this matter was brought back because of the public input that you received and because of what we understood to be some of the interest in further discussion of this matter from the board itself. So this is something that, again, would require a change. Right now, it isn't permitted under the ordinance. And so you still have the flexibility of not allowing it at all. I certainly understand Commissioner Reynolds' effort to find a little bit more of a restrictive setting. It's not clear that we, under these circumstances, have that ability to line up specifically the requirements that would be set. So right now, I think that you should be discussing either allowing it or not allowing it. And we can give you a motion that would change the amendment to permit it, and then we could perhaps work, or maybe it can say with specific restrictions that the staff can then work out kind of the details, because it's not clear to me that we can work out that kind of detail right now. Is it 6 feet? Is it 8 feet? Is it, what is the nature of the restriction? What percentage of the outside does it consume? So I'm not sure that we're ready to provide that kind of detail. We're only ready to respond to comments from the public that were asking for this to be allowed, and the commission's at least discussion by some of the members suggesting they were willing to consider this opportunity.
Okay. We'll take if you don't mind, I think, I know it's probably several of us, we've been up here for almost 3 hours. So before we continue on, I think we'll take a 10-minute break to use the.
To do whatever.
Exactly, thank you. And then we'll come back and then we'll continue on the discussion on this permitting outdoor smoking.
For you, it is personal. I'm glad you leave it, get the hell out of here. See, I tell you, they said, I didn't help you with the car. I was standing up behind it 100%. They hold the door for you? I slam it on your way out. Don't hit your ass on the way out. Yeah, so are you really trying to, you're gonna start working in January? It's a terrible loss to the county, but it may be a benefit to the county as well. We'll see.
You have plenty of capable.
Yeah, she could actually take your position, couldn't she? Yeah, you should apply for that position as assistant city county manager. I'm in favor of that. I support that. I think, but I think your responsibility will grow tremendously, you know? Well, I'm not saying. Those are gonna be some big shoes.
I agree.
I have one at home. When are we meeting on this? Today? I thought it was tomorrow. After this.
All right, we'll give everybody a couple of minutes to come in here. It's 12 o'clock, and so we'll look to get started again. Okay, so I know we were talking on item number 5, the permitting of outdoor smoking. We were just getting to more discussion. Is there any other discussion, at least on the commission, questions? Okay, is there any public input on the allowance for outdoor smoking? Mr. Pacheco?
Derek Pacheco for the record. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, commissioners. Again, to reiterate what I've been saying all day, we need to stop complicating this situation. It's very, very simple. We have the legal framework ready for this to go right now, on time, and bring some GRT to this community. As far as outdoor consumption, a licensed premise is already defined by the state. You can't just say consumption is legal out in the parking lot. Doesn't work that way. The definition of a licensed facility includes the framework for an outdoor fenced area. There's no kids that are going to come up and just start inhaling secondhand smoke unless they belong to some crummy parents, or if the security guards that are required to be on site aren't doing their job. And if the facility wants to open themselves up to liability and lose their license, yeah, maybe that'll happen. I don't think anyone wants that to happen. You can easily go down to 28 Brewery, if you're a 16-year-old kid, have your older brother go order a beer and hand it over the fence. You guys weren't concerned about that. You can have a 16-year-old kid, you can have a 5-year-old kid next to the pub and inhale secondhand smoke that's been proven to be linked to cancer. But you're not concerned about that. We already have the state regulations in place to make this a successful program. Do not overcomplicate it. Let us consume outdoors, let it fall within the framework of what the state's allowing, and let's move on. Thank you.
Okay, any other public input? Any other questions or from the commission? Commissioner Reynolds?
No questions, but I'd like to make a motion. I'd like to make a motion that we approve, based on what's offered here, that the approve to allow outdoor smoking of cannabis at the cannabis consumption areas, and then an amendment to section 350-502-G, point G, point 1, point A, would include the word indoor for indoor consumption areas, and section 350-502, point G, point 1, point B, point 1 would be changed to the smoking of cannabis products is allowed outdoors in cannabis consumption areas.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor. Is there a second? Okay, I'm not hearing a second on that amendment, so it will die or fail due to a lack of second. Okay. If there's no other motions at this point, then we'll move on to the last item, which is allowing cannabis cultivation in community gardens. Ms. Ainsworth?
Yes. Thank you. The last section, which to address public input, was whether or not community gardens should allow cannabis. Now, the definition of community gardens, which already exists in the ordinance, obviously does not address cannabis. The city of Las Cruces did exclude cannabis from their definition, and the previous draft that we presented excluded both cannabis and hemp from the definition. After staff discussion, we realized that hemp should not be treated as cannabis because it does not have the chemical. And it is already permitted to be grown pretty much anywhere that agricultural is grown. It's used for things such as textiles and paper products. And so it is more appropriate in a community garden where you might have educational programs. Cannabis, we still believe, should be excluded from community gardens, in large part because it's not a product that's consumed by everyone. But additionally, there are requirements that from the state that require fencing and a secure area, which is really not compatible in a community garden. If you're going to grow it there, it's not going to be accessible to the public anyway because of those requirements from the state. So I would ask that you amend the draft to exclude only cannabis from the community gardens definition.
Okay, are there any questions, discussion items from the commission? Okay. All right, public comment, Mr. Pacheco.
Derek Pacheco for the record. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, commissioners. To build off what was said at the start of this meeting by our religious leader. Then God said, "Let the earth bring forth grass, the herb that yields seed, and the fruit tree that yields fruit according to its kind, whose seed is in itself on the earth." And it was so. And the earth brought forth grass, the herb that yields seed according to its kind, and the tree that yields fruit whose seed is in itself according to its kind. And God said that it was good. So the evening and the morning were the third day. If we're basing our conversations today on the will of God and the word of God, and God has already spoken to this point that this is good, and if we swear in to that flag behind you all in respect to the spirit of the state law, then excluding cannabis after determining that hemp, the same genus of plant, is okay? That is overcomplicating and re-stigmatizing the plant altogether, which is what we are trying to avoid. Community gardens are under attack in our community, in our city, in our county. My community garden project, located at 646 South Mesquite Street, has been under attack for 10 months. And out of nowhere, the city decided to add cannabis to the definition of community garden. No other community around this nation has done such a dastardly deed than to keep community and cannabis away from each other. You guys need to think long and hard about this. Take cannabis off of the definition of things that are not allowed. Because you're saying that hops are okay. You're saying barley and rice are okay. You're saying opium is okay. Opium comes from poppies. There's no definition outlawing poppies in the municipal code proposed definition. That's up to the state and the federal government to regulate and figure out. Don't re-stigmatize the plant. Let our communities learn from this and follow the state framework. Thank you.
Okay, is there any other public input regarding allowing cannabis cultivation in community gardens? Seeing none. All right, is there any from the commission, an amendment or any motions?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Chaparro?
thank you. I make a motion to exclude any cannabis from community gardens throughout Doña Ana County.
Okay, we have a,
Unincorporated areas, thank you.
sorry, I think so I believe the motion is to only exclude cannabis. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Do we need to make it more clear that we're removing hemp or from the original list? Mr. Gooden, or?
No, so I see what we've got. So my understanding is as it's currently written, the proposal as currently written would exclude hemp and cannabis. The motion is to make it so that it only excludes cannabis and not excludes hemp.
Correct.
So that's an
Okay.
amendment that's
I just
being
want to make sure that
proposed.
we have it clear.
Right, and so we have the motion on that amendment, so now we need a second if it's going to proceed.
Okay, is there a second? Second by Vice Chair Murillo Trujillo. Is there any comments or questions on the proposed amendment? Okay. All right. Brandy, will you call the roll on the proposed amendment to exclude only cannabis from the community garden definition?
Commissioner Ellens?
Yes.
Commissioner Reynolds?
Abstain.
Commissioner Chaparro?
Yes.
Vice Chair Murillo Trujillo?
Yes.
Chair Sanchez?
Yes. Okay, that amendment is approved. I
Okay,
believe
that
that's the-
concludes my presentation.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, so now I think, is there any other amendments or considerations with the proposed ordinance that the commission would like to propose or make a motion on before we consider the motion on the floor, which is the ordinance as amended? Okay. Is there any comments on the motion, on the ordinance as amended? Commissioner Reynolds?
I think that you said, I think as a point of order, the only thing we have on the floor now is the motion as it was originally done, okay?
With
We
the-
don't have a motion to accept all the amendments, do we?
Commissioner, it's the motion now. You have amended the original motion several times, so the motion, and it just goes without indication that it is now the motion to adopt amendment number 3 to the
With amendment,
UDC as amended.
Okay, so we don't need another motion for that.
No.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, is there any comments? We'll allow final public input on the final vote for the for the ordinance as amended. Okay. Brandy, will you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Ellens,
Yes.
Commissioner Reynolds,
Yes.
Commissioner Chaparro,
Yes.
Vice Chair Murillo Trujillo,
Yes.
Chair Sanchez.
Yes.
That does have an ordinance number. That ordinance is 324-2021.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brandy. Thank you, Ms. Ainsworth. Okay, we're on to correspondence. Brandy, is there any correspondence?
Yes. Estate of Clara Vigil versus Doña Ana County and Eric Flores versus Doña Ana County.
Okay. And we'll need a motion to convene in closed session pursuant to the attorney-client privilege to discuss the matter regarding national prescription opiate litigation, MDL 118-OP-46206, as authorized by the Open Meetings Act, Section 10-15-1H7, and to discuss the annual performance evaluation and related issues, including potential amendments to the county manager's contract regarding the county manager, as authorized by the Open Meetings Act, Section 10-15-1H2 of NMSA 1978. Can I get a motion and a second to go into closed session as mentioned?
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Chaparro, second by Vice Chair Murillo Trujillo. Brandy, can I get a roll call on going into closed session?
Commissioner Ellens,
Yes.
Commissioner Reynolds,
Yes.
Commissioner Chaparro,
Yes.
Vice Chair Murillo Trujillo,
Yes.
Chair Sanchez.
Yes. Okay, we'll convene in closed session. I don't know if we want to stay in here or if we want to go into the conference room. Stay here?